Right, back on to making some progress with the Escort. Decided to start cracking on with sorting out the wiring. When I bought this car, it had never been driven. I've never heard the engine running. I didn't want to put any power through it in case there was a short anywhere on the wiring. These wiring looms do get a little bit crusty after a certain amount of time, especially with the heat around the engine bay side of it. There's also some strange alarm immobilizer attached in here, so I'm just going to work my way through and just cut all that out. Seems quite a basic one that just links into the ignition switch, so I don't think it's going to be overly difficult to remove this. And I did a quick Google and all the wiring diagrams for it are on the internet, so shouldn't be too hard to remove. My plan with the wiring loom is to stretch it out, get it all roughly laid out in the right area on the garden, just do a visual check of it all. Some parts of it have been cut, such as the section that runs over the roof, but I do have it all, so I will solder all that back together. Around the engine bay, there'll be some wiring that I do replace, but generally it's not too bad. The wiring that goes around the alternator and the starter motor, that one's really close to the turbo, so we'll probably just replace all of that. I figured the best way to test all the wiring loom was to feed it through the car. So what I've then done is I've wrapped it in loom wrap, which I think is a little bit nicer than it's like a material, it's a little bit nicer than using insulating tape, looks a little bit nicer as well. And then I'm just going to feed it all through the fuse box in the engine bay, starting with what I believe is like the rear lights. Just feed that through, and then what I'll do is I'll put 12 volts through the wiring loom and just test certain sections of it. For instance, the lighting, dashboard, clocks, things like that, heater switches, just to make sure that it works. I think compared to modern cars, they're really quite basic wiring looms on these. It's all one piece, which is a bit of a pain, but it's not the end of the world. So I'll just get in the car and just stretch it through and then just roughly just lay it in position. And that's all I'll do on this for now. Really need to get some tyres bought for the wheels so I can get the car on the ground and then just drag it out on the drive and be able to work around the car a little bit better. And then I thought I'd give the ECU mounts a quick clean up with the flap disc, get rid of any old paint and rust off of them, and a quick coat with gloss black. I then use some 3mm self-adhesive foam just to help with the vibration against the bulkhead. These brackets had it on as standard, but obviously I took that off while I was cleaning them all up. And then just wanted to pop the back covers off the ECUs. You can see that I think this one's already chipped because the warranty sticker is broken. You can definitely tell there's been some manual soldering done in there. So it looks absolutely fine, no dry joints or anything like that I can see. So I'll just pop it all back together after giving the case a quick clean up. And then just get the brackets mounted back to the bulkhead, and that's another bit of the car done. And then on to something that I've never touched before on one of these cars, which is the metering head. Don't know if I'm going to make things better or worse with this, but we're going to have a go. Never drove this car or had the engine running, so I don't know what sort of state this is going to be in. The guy that I bought the car from had said he basically bought it, drove it home, got a few miles away from home, and the bottom end started knocking. So he turned it off and got it recovered back, and it sat there for quite a few years. I'd assume this is in good condition, but because it did sit for such a long amount of time, I'm going to have a go at giving it a refurb. The first thing I do is just try and get all the dirt and dust off of it. So just using a paintbrush and a hoover just to try and clean it up a little bit. Then I just remove all the pipes and the regulators from the unit. And then the base of the metering unit just comes off with several 10mm bolts. So just nip round them with a impact gun and a spanner just to get them out of the way. Then you can see as the unit comes apart, there's just a cork gasket in the middle of there. As I say, never taken one of these apart before, so it's a learning curve for me on this one. Don't want to cause myself more problems and have to replace the unit, so I'm going to go careful with this. There is a sensor on the side, which I'll just pop off. That's just held on with a couple of flathead screws. So the actual metering head itself is held onto the body by several torque-headed screws. Now, these were really tight, so I'd really recommend if anybody is taking one of these apart, make sure you use really good bits. This torque driver that I'd got was pretty much brand new, luckily enough. I'd hardly ever used it, so it actually gripped the torque bits quite nicely. And although I had to get some grips on there to give me a little bit of extra force on it, they did crack off. But I think if I'd used some of my other torque bit sockets, I probably would have just ended up rounding the head off. So definitely worth using some new bits on these if you're taking one apart. And then there is one last torque bit that's just hidden underneath one of the injector pipes. So you just have to take the fitting off there, and then you can just get that out.
So to get to the diaphragm, there's several torque headed screws to undo. What to do is just crack them loose and then just pop them back in loosely with a bit of the head sticking up. And then what you can do is just give them a tap with a hammer to break the seal between the two sections, so you don't have to go wedging any screwdrivers in or anything like that and possibly damaging the aluminium casting. And then pull the two sections apart. You'll find 4 quite large springs in there that just sit on top of 4 plastic seats, and they're quite firmly attached to the rubber diaphragm. There are 4 O-rings that sit around the control plunger in the middle, so you got a replacement ones of these with the new kit. Then you just peel the diaphragm from the old head, and then you can just remove the little white seats, and then at the back there's the small little metal seats as well. Just remove those, and then you can just remove the little baskets that sit in the fuel distribution head. Then I just use a 13mm socket just to push against the control plunger, and then just push the head down just to pop that out. The only thing holding it in there is a rubber O-ring. A replacement O-ring comes with the kit. And then just inside where the control plunger sits, there's another O-ring there, so we'll just remove that. I'm only going to clean this up with some degreaser. I don't want to run it through the aqua blaster and end up with bits of glass throughout it, so I guess an ultrasonic cleaner would probably be a useful tool on when doing one of these, but I don't have one of those. Once that's done, good clean out with the airline, get rid of any dirt, and lay everything out and start putting it back together. So the first thing is to get the O-ring in where the control plunger goes, and then I just replace the O-ring on the end of the control plunger. And then I just pop the 4 O-rings over each of the ports at the side of the plunger, just to hold them in place while I'm reassembling everything. I'll just put a cable tie around it. And then it's just a case of reassembling it in reverse order of taking it apart. So pop the little cups into the head, then just push the plunger back in, just sort of lined this up, and then just push it against the workbench, feel it pop back into place. Take the cable tie back off, place the metal cups over the top of each of the injector ports, and then place the diaphragm on top, and then just lay out the 4 white plastic spring seats. Then just sit the springs on top of each of the plastic caps. I used a 46mm socket just on the workbench just to sit the metering head on while I was working on it. Pop a few bolts in just to keep it all aligned, watching to make sure I don't knock any of the O-rings off or move any of the springs out of place. And then slowly pushing it together and just making sure that the springs stayed in their seat. Then just push them together. And with it all bolted back together, just to check the screw at the bottom of the plunger, I just adjusted it slightly. I believe this should sit at 0.6mm, so it's just a case of winding the inner screw. Then once that's set, just push the tabs down on the locking washer, hold it all in place. Just cleaned up the face where the sensor sits. That comes with new O-rings as well, where that goes. Then just cleaned up the rest of the metering head with some degreaser, bit of brake cleaner, and then a quick run over with the wire brush just to try and make it look a bit newer. I then just put the flat plate back in place, just made sure that it moved freely. And then just the retaining plate for the flap, I just put a little bit of Loctite on those nuts before putting them in. And then put a new O-ring on the underside of the metering head and just put it back in place, and then just bolted that down. I don't know any torque settings for the metering head, so if anybody's got any data sheets to hand, that'd be really helpful. Then I just used some earbuds just to block up the holes, stop any dirt getting in there. The adjustment screw was well and truly rotten. There was no chance of getting an Allen key in there. So what I've done is I've just drilled it out. All it does is pass like a 3mm Allen bolt through. So drill it out and then it can go back in place just to seal the head unit. And then I'll just have a little captive nut on top. So as long as you've got a lengthy 3mm Allen key, should be able to make any adjustments. Just need to get a gasket for the base of it and then get it bolted back on. Then on to cleaning up the heater matrix, in quite a bit of a sorry state, full of leaves and twigs and various other bits. So first of all, get the heater matrix core out of there. These are known for leaking and causing wet patches in the
the bottom of the footwell. So we'll give this a test. Really simple to take out, it's just 2 Phillips screws, then the whole unit just slides out. Then just remove the control cables that just move the flaps around in the box. There's a couple of metal clips that hold this unit together, split straight down the middle, and then the rest of the clips are interlocking plastic clips that was a bit of a faff to get off, but get a screwdriver under there, just twist it a little bit, and eventually it just pops apart. And then with them apart, you can see the blades in there that control which way the air is directed. So I'll just take them out. Whatever material was on them before, it's definitely had its day. Very crusty and dusty. So just give them a rub over with the hoover just to get rid of any loose bits. And just a good rub over with the DA just to get rid of any rust. They're not rotten, it's just surface rust, so it's not too bad. A good few coats of zinc paint, got them looking a lot fresher. Then I bought some self-adhesive 3mm foam just off Amazon, which I just cut to size and just stuck on the paddles. And reassembly is really simple, just put little plastic end caps on the paddles and push them into place. Then get the 2 sides back together. Did find using some pliers helped get the catches back in fully. Pop the control cables back on. Did clean the heat matrix up a little bit, but I thought I'd give it a quick test. So I just connected up the compressor to it and a bucket full of water, and then just make sure that there was no leaks. And as you can see, there was a lot of leaks. So worth testing before putting back together. One of these off eBay was about 20 quid delivered, so it's just not worth messing around with. Now with the fan units, I had 2 of these available, both of them in working condition, be it a bit tatty, a few plastic clips broken here and there, so the idea is to make one good one out of the 2. So just come apart really easy. A few metal clips that hold the plastics together, and then a clip over the main motor that just allows that all to come off in one piece. They seem in not bad condition. They get up to speed really quick. There's no issues with the bearings or anything, so we'll just give them a clean up, aquablast the plastics, and then put them back together. Really simple to reassemble. Pop the main motor and the blades back in the bottom part of the casting, and then the top clip that contains the, I think it's like a coil, holds it all together, and that has the earth wire coming off that as well. Had a bit of a badly crimped on spade connector, so we'll just remove that and put a new connector on there. It's just the earth wire, so nothing too major. And with that all back together, just give it a quick test. These 12-volt Pro, great little tools. If you're doing any work on car electrics, then definitely get one of these. I think they're about 25 quid. Just allows you to inject 12 volts, or you can pass the negative through to there as well for any fault finding. I just connect one of these up to a battery charger. And then to finish off, just some new gaskets on the other side. And that's this little part of the car complete. So not a huge amount of progress in this video, but amazing how much time it takes doing all these little bits and sorting everything out. Trying to work through every single part of the car, so it is going to take time. Need to get some tyres for the wheels at some point so I can get it on the ground. I think that'll make it a little bit easier moving it around. So I think that's going to be the next job to get done. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for watching.